Hi, people. This is a really interesting one tonight. Gino Parisi. You might have seen my post. As I said in my post, he does look a little bit like a Bond villain. Um, I can show you exactly what I mean by that. But one of the nicest guys that you're likely to meet and come across. And before we get into that, all the people that have never watched this before or been part of this broadcast just need to explain a little bit about what Flux is. So it's a magazine, the Flux Review magazine, run by the lovely Lisa, who's Lisa Gray, who's in the picture there. And that particular copy that you can see is actually also a limited edition book. You can find it in most magazine outlets. You can find it in art galleries all over the world. But the Flux exhibition has come from this. And quite frankly, as you can see, I will just hide myself there. You'll see here that it's very busy. This was Piccadilly in December last year. The next one, as you can see there, 25th to 28th of July, 206 Marylebone Road in London. And the tickets are all available on Eventbrite. So it's really quite an amazing exhibition. Certainly something that is worth coming to. You see 80 plus artists, as you can see on the screen there. Plenty of art is on the wall, plenty of sculptures, plenty of different types of art as well. And the whole exhibition really flows well. So what I'm going to do is tonight's guest, I've created a little film to explain. Now, I can also tell you I am completely and utterly out of my comfort zone on this one, because this is not the kind of work that I do at all. So it'd be pretty cool to see what Gino himself does. So here's a little film that I created to explain that. As you can see, really quite interesting work. So without further ado, let us bring in Gino.
Hello, Gary.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I know.
Quite flattered that you described me as a Bond villain.
Well, you have to admit, you do look like that in that black and white picture. Yes, all you need really is to have a little black and white cat sitting in your arm that you're poking, and that's it. You're in there. Okay, so Gino Parisi, Italian name.
It is.
But you're in Monmouthshire, so perhaps we can have a little bit of explanation how you ended up where you are.
So, how I ended up here. My mother was from Wales and my father was from Italy. And although I was born in England, we went to Italy when I was about 3 months. And then I was sent to boarding school in England when I was 6, 7. So hence I speak like this. And not with a beautiful Italian accent.
Oh, well, that is such a shame. And
it is,
we were talking earlier.
I regret that.
Well, we were talking earlier, and I did say that Italy's one of my favourite countries in the world. So it's absolutely amazing. And also, you have this. Look, we learn French. That's what we do at
Yeah.
school, and we're not very good at speaking French with a French accent. But if you start learning Italian, you can't help but bring your hands up. You cannot help it.
No.
It's
And I
just
do
such a
use my hands an awful lot.
yeah.
So they'll start going like this when I'm trying to describe something.
Okay, well that's excellent. So tell me, how did you come to art, or did art come to you? Exactly what's the story behind
Wow.
Gino's work?
It's a pretty long one, Gary. How long have we got? Art as whether it's my Italian culture, I don't know, but from a very, 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 I'm talking 4, 5, I drew. I drew pictures, did whatever. And it was then I went to school and it was the only thing I was actually good at, to be honest. Um, and yeah, it's just always been there. It was the one thing that was predominant in my life from a very, very early age. And I remember being in school and always being the best drawer and things like that, you know. Um, and I remember being told off by one of the art teachers because I must have been about 8, and I drew the birds like Van Gogh used to draw his birds, and he told me off because he
Oh,
did. I don't know why he told me off, but yeah. So art's always been like that, and then but the one thing that I kind of battled with was that going to a boarding school in England, um, they never nurtured artistic creativity. It
no,
was all very much about academia and the sciences. It was an all boys school, so it was very pushed on science or sports. And the only thing I wanted to do was art
yeah,
all the time. And
yeah,
and so it was kind of suppressed. And that reflecting back on that, I think art is suppressed in society, and I think art
mm,
is suppressed
mm,
in schools, and creativity is suppressed. So being in that environment, then it wasn't like you don't go to art, you don't go to art school. What are you going to do with art? Don't be so silly. You can have that as a hobby. It
yeah,
wasn't. It wasn't. Your passion. And so as I grew up, and I did study art in college, and I have to admit, I didn't last very long for various reasons I shan't go into. Um, and I think one of the reasons really was, again, although you were there studying art, it was suppressing your own creativity
right,
because it was conditioning. It was criteria driven. This is how
yeah,
you do things. This is how you should do it. Now we're going to do this. And I understand that the concept of we've got to learn skills. I'm not saying that,
mm,
but I'm talking about the inner creativity that we all have. And I think it's suppressed within those environments. And so art for me during that period was slightly in the background, and it pushed me into sort of um, just standing slightly behind the curtain with what I was doing. Um, and at that time in my 20s, I did a lot of work with charcoals, and that was predominantly my thing, really.
right,
And I was obsessed with figures, the human form.
okay,
Um, and I wonder whether that was because of my sort of Italian heritage sometimes, because of the beautiful sculptures you see in Italy.
yeah,
You know, when you think of the David, I mean, that's just breathtaking.
mm,
Um, and a lot of it, I mean, some of it kind of bordered quite erotic as well.
yeah,
But I loved the way you can use charcoal, and I would never use. Well, I still don't. I don't ever use like a pencil or a stick. I use my fingers because for me, that's how you form it. It's more organic. Um, but personally, even then, I was always slightly. stepped behind. I wasn't confident.
That's true of a lot of artists, though. That's true of a
Yeah,
lot of artists. I mean, confidence is a real thing that all artists struggle with, for sure.
yeah,
And and I'm finding when I'm interviewing people for this show, then that comes up a lot.
mm,
But and also the never thinking you're good enough is
yeah,
another thing.
right.
But I think half the point is, and we sort of spoke about this a little bit before the show started, is that other people's opinions seem to matter too much,
Mm.
and that ends up clouding what you're actually trying
Yeah,
to do,
it suppresses that,
and
suppresses that creativity.
yeah, and the point
Yeah,
is, though, it is just their opinion.
yeah,
And that's the thing that you have to sort of understand. All right, that's their opinion. Might not like what you do, might love it. Everybody's different.
mm.
But it's
It is someone's
just
opinion.
remembering it. Yeah, it's somebody's
Yeah,
opinion, and often it will be people that think they know what they're talking about as well, which
yeah,
that, and that's not necessarily. Look at your work, the way you work. We'll come on to that in a minute or so. But you say on your website that when you first start your painting, you have no idea where it's going to take you. It just
no,
comes from you. So, and that's quite an interesting thing. So somebody appreciating your work almost needs to get inside your head, which is why it becomes so important when you're showing work that you're there actually talking to them and not explaining, because everybody's got their own
mm,
way that a picture goes, but at least give them a little bit of a head start, which is, I think, is really quite important.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why I suppose I did this, because I wanted to have the opportunity to talk about that, and
Yeah.
how, when I think of the early days of when I was doing stuff in my 30s, and I did start exhibiting in my 30s, but my work then is absolutely completely different to what it is now.
Right.
And the reason for that was something which, when I look back, was the pivotal point in my life where things changed,
Hmm.
and that's when my art changed. And what happened was that I'd always been interested in spirituality ever since I remember. It was always art and spirituality for me, and I never really thought the two could mix. And it wasn't, well, the last decade, I suppose, when I was at a really low point in my life, having one of these typical artistic trauma
Moments.
sort of things. Life is devastating. That a spiritual book came into my life, and this book
Hmm.
was called, or is called, A Course in Miracles, ACIM, and I'll explain.
Okay, that explains. Yes. Okay, we'll come on to that.
Um, and this book it's a spiritual text, and there's a text you read, and there is a lesson for every single day of the year.
Hmm.
And I did this. I thought, I'm going to do this for a whole year, and that book changed my life completely.
Hmm.
Um, in its simplest form, it basically clears your mind of all those fears that create the blocks in your life. So I'm glad
Right.
what you mentioned about before. All artists, we have this idea we're not good enough.
Hmm.
I'm not confident. I can't knock on a gallery owner's door, or I can't apply for something, or this imposter syndrome. And looking back at my career, where I had these blocks, which was stopping me moving forward, that spiritual text has helped me remove those blocks. And then I realized that once I did that, that has happened. That is when my art changed. And that's when that creativity just completely flows. because I realized that the blocks to my creativity I was creating myself through my own lack of confidence, or thinking I wasn't good enough, or fear of trying something new, blah blah, whatever. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
And once that was removed, that's when things just went boom, and they completely turned around. Um, so when I say, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do when I start a painting, I really genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know where it comes from. So I
Right.
know that it comes from me, in the sense that I am a conduit for that creative energy. And yes, it is partly mine, but it comes from something apart from me as well.
Mm.
And that probably sounds really bonkers.
Well,
um,
no, well, it doesn't really, because I think that's probably true of a lot of artists. I
mm,
mean, my own stuff is really quite dark, and that has come. Well, in
yeah,
fact, people think I've lost the plot sometimes with some stuff, or I smoke something very dodgy. But the truth is that, I say, if you've got something inside you that you really want to bring out and do, then go and do it, because you're a long time
absolutely.
dead. So
Yeah.
go for it. And it's interesting how uh, your work progresses. Let's bring up. You're talking about the ACM. Let's bring up this picture, um, and you will need to remind me of the title of it, because I've got so many of your
It's
pictures that you
ACM
said.
number.
Oh,
It was
this is number one, isn't it?
number three.
Number
So
three, right?
I was inspired to do a series on this book, on this spiritual text, and it's abbreviated ACM. So I literally just went one, two, three, and I am going to do more as I sort of develop with it.
Hmm.
Um, but it was a first step where I actually, if you look closely, the pages of this book are actually collaged onto the painting,
Ah, okay.
and they're different lessons. So there's 300 and whatever lessons, yeah.
Yep.
And I just randomly took out the lessons, and I sort of collaged them. And it is said that this book holds a certain energy, okay, a spiritual energy. And I'm when I mean spiritual, I'm not talking about religion. I'm
No.
talking about
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was almost like when I wanted to, well, it goes deeper than that. Where do I start? When we look at everything, when we look at ourselves, when we look at the world, everything is energy. We break it down to, body bits and water, and then atoms and particles, and they're
Mm.
all energy. And that's a scientific fact. I'm not a
Mm.
scientist at all. Yeah.
Hmm.
So if we are all energy, therefore we are all connected in that sense.
Right.
Yeah. Through
Yeah.
something we don't know. And therefore that sort of, that feeling, that emotion, that vibration, that spiritual energy, what does that look like? And for me, it was about trying to capture that and putting it into a painting. And so if this book has an energy, a positive, creative, loving energy, whatever you want to call it,
Mm.
I thought I need to put that on the actual painting. I need to tear these pages out and use them, yeah,
Mm.
and see what happens from that. So literally, like I said before, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I will have an inspiration. Right, I'm gonna use those pages. I want to use those pages. How am I going to use those pages? And I would, stick them on, and from there allow myself to channel that energy of what this book is, what it means, or what spirituality is, and see and just let it just channel out onto the canvas.
So, I was talking to Michelle Watson a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
um, and I know this is true of Leslie Oldacre as well. That she will have two, three, four paintings on the go at once.
Yeah.
Is that the same with you, or are you working on one because of how you've just described it?
No, both. I have just sometimes worked on one,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I can work on different ones. Like I did a small series of 3 paintings, all the same. But no, both actually. I've
Right.
done both. Where,
Yeah.
but it's almost like they have for me they have a what's the word? They have a certain connection, but the energy kind of comes from maybe different angles.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
for me, it is about that energy, that vibration of creativity. That for me, I'm the conduit, and it comes through, and it will just I will go into some sort of I don't know. It's almost like a trance, Gary, where I have to be in the mood. I will go in. I don't actually do any prep. Now, years ago, when I think back in my 20s, 30s, I would do preliminary sketches. I'd think of layout, blah, blah, blah. And I don't really do that.
So, how if this is all as you as described, then how do you choose your color palette?
It chooses itself. So I will be inspired to do, say, pick up a certain color, mix certain colors, etc., etc. But
Mm.
it's not. It's almost like it's not a conscious decision. It's like an unconscious decision. So it's a bit like the only way I can describe it. When you drive a car and you've been driving for 20 years, you don't get in that car and think, right, I've got to put the key in,
Oh no, yeah,
or I've got to
exactly.
put the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
gear in,
yeah, yeah.
and then I've got. You don't, do you?
So it's completely natural, basically,
It just becomes. It's
instinctive.
what you call the unconscious habit, the
Yeah,
unconscious behavior,
yeah, yeah,
and then you're driving away,
yeah.
and that's the only way I can really describe it. It's like go into that zone, and I have to be in the mood, and it just all comes natural. But
So, and again, so that's an interesting point. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you're doing an exhibition, you've got to get some
yeah,
work done for it, etc., but you wake up in a foul mood. Does that does that then mean that the picture you then generate reflects the mood that you're in?
if that happens, I will get myself out of that foul mood before I start.
Right.
Now
Good.
I've learned that, and that is what this spiritual book is about. This is what this text is about. It's
Okay.
about controlling your mind
Interesting.
in the
Hmm.
sense of um, you can wake up in the, and we all do this. We can wake up in the morning and we're in a foul mood, or we can be in a good mood.
Yeah.
What this training program is about is being able to wake up in the morning, acknowledging and going, whoa, I'm in a bad mood. I'm in control here. I'm going to change that.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be in a good mood now. I'm not going to let that ruin my day. And the book identifies that sort of bad mood person as your ego.
So
And so,
there's a lot of people that will watch this video and think, I don't care how well this might work. You'd never get me out of the foul mood that I get in, and that that will, I can see that will be the case for some people. But I can also see that what you do works for you, and that's the most
yeah,
important part of all. You're the artist.
yeah,
So let's look at the next picture, which again is using
yeah.
the same book. And is this number one?
This is number 2.
Number two? Oh, I'll
Yeah.
get there in the end. I'll get there in a minute. I don't think I've
Yeah,
got
this
number
is
one, have
no, you haven't. You have got it, but not on this reel.
I?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah, this was number 2,
Right.
and when I look at that, I think, my God, that's a complete contrast to the other one.
Mm, yeah.
And
So
I
so this is interesting. If you don't know which direction your work's going to take you in when you first start it, and you go through this sort of trance state. Do you get to the end of the painting and stand back and you're pleasantly surprised or surprised by what you've created?
Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. And what I tend to work on it, and then, but it takes up a lot of sort of, I go into this zone place, and then you come out of it, and then you leave. I could sometimes just leave it and I go away and carry on with my life, and then I think I've got to go back, and I go back to it and I finish it off, or I think about something else, or I'm inspired by it, and then I finish it completely, and I will just leave it, and then a couple of days I can go back to it and think, I don't know how I did that.
Yeah.
I don't have I could not recreate it.
Right. And do you actually sell prints of your work as well?
I do, yes.
Yeah,
I
and that's
on
always a
prints.
good idea, because
Yeah.
you couldn't replicate this again. And
No.
you'd never get it exactly the same, or if you, and especially the way that you do go into this trance-like state, you probably make a start on hoping you're going to get this right, and it would be a completely different picture.
Yeah.
So there's no point in trying to replicate it, and therefore it really does make your work completely unique, one off every time you do a painting. It's quite interesting.
And I use quite large canvases, so well, relatively large. That's about 80 by 100.
Right. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do have the limited edition prints are much smaller.
Much smaller. So,
Yeah.
and that's it's similar again to Michelle the other week. Her work is big, and I find that quite amazing, because I don't know, it's your personality that's coming out in your work, and that's
Yeah.
really that's why I said absolutely Bond villain. See, I was right. No, and you can, but it is your personality that is coming out in the
Yeah,
work,
because
and
there's
I think
something
that's the bit that's
yeah,
important. Yeah,
there is part of me in that,
yeah,
because it's part of my energy. It's my creativity.
yeah, exactly.
It's
And
it
what also makes it interesting is it makes it almost copy proof, because someone's completely got to have your brain to come up with something
yeah.
similar.
And
And
nobody wants my brain, Gary.
no, well, same with me. Nobody wants mine. But but it's quite interesting how. Let's jump on to the last one now. You'll again help me out with the title, because I've got it wrong every time so far. Oh, and let's just jump back. And I love this. I love this
You like that
one.
one, don't you?
Absolutely love this
This is
one.
the chaos of the ego, and I mentioned the ego earlier,
Yeah, you
about
did. Yeah.
that saboteur in our heads that can ruin our day, can ruin
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
sorts of things, and
Absolutely.
it's about that sort of this duality that we have. Where, I suppose you want to call it good and evil, good and bad, or good mood, bad mood, whatever. That person that sometimes is we've let run our lives. When we look back in our life, you think, my God, what on earth was I doing? That was my ego doing that. It wasn't
Yeah.
really me. And the
Yeah.
chaos it creates, and we don't realize the chaos it creates until we find peace, and then we have the contrast and think, that's where that is.
So once again, the other thing with every artist's work, but particularly with what we're talking about now, is the title. The title is an important part of the work. It's not just a random, I'll call it
No.
that. It's actually very important, the title of the work. And so that surely must come to you when you've finished it, because if you don't know what you're going to start with, then I guess you have the basis of an idea in the back of your mind. But
I like to call it an inspiration. So I have an
yeah,
inspiration.
yeah.
And then I allow that I step aside, I suppose, and then I allow that to come through. And yes, you're right. At the end of it, I'll go, a title will just come to my mind.
So, who would you say? Is there any particular artist that sits in with you and your as an inspiration to you in the first place? Is there any particular artist that you had? Because I did, my inspiration, as I've said on numerous times, was Caravaggio, Vermeer, and Canaletto.
Yeah.
That they are all artists that sit with me, and Dali as well. That they all sit with me and the way that I work and the
Yeah.
ideas I come up with. But where is there anywhere in your past where the inspiration from other artists has actually helped you
The
in a
only thing that
direction?
springs to my mind there is when I was in art college, and you have to follow whatever their curriculum is doing. I can't remember what we were doing at the time, and I wanted to do an abstract painting because I'd loved Picasso, and he was my ultimate, god, and we weren't allowed to do that.
Sorry, mate. Yeah.
But for me, I don't know whether he's inspired my work, but I've just admired that at Picasso's work. I think
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
His later were not the very early things, but his
But there are a lot of artists that would attribute their inspiration to Picasso for
I mean,
sure.
Dali, I find interesting Dali, and I love his
Oh, it's bonkers,
statement.
absolutely bonkers. It's completely
I think
bonkers, but I love it.
amazing.
Yeah,
That is amazing,
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
also Warhol
yeah,
fascinated me
yeah,
because he was a bit bonkers as well, wasn't he? He was it,
yeah.
and
But you see,
I I
I
love
don't.
their creativity of that and
Yeah,
not caring. That's what I like about it. I don't mean it bonkers in a negative way, but that
no.
idea of
Well,
I'm just going to be me,
yeah.
you
Well,
know?
it does actually say in my artist statement. I use the line that because this is a much overused uh, sentence or thing when people say you've got to think outside the box. But I actually say, well, you've heard that saying, but actually, if there is a box, it's already too late because in my view, if you've got the imagination and you've got the creativity, then actually the world exploding around you with all of that is only governed by your ability.
Exactly.
If your
And
mind can go,
and
then
also those blocks that you have in you,
mm,
and this is what I was
mm,
saying about this spiritual text, is that it helps you remove those blocks. So you stop fearing what people will think. You
mm,
stop worrying. You stop having to have other people's validation because you release that fear. Because they're all
yeah,
based on fear, and that prevents our creativity. That can block that creativity. And
yeah,
for my journey, that's what happened to me. Once I let those blocks go, that's when my art just went completely different. And that's when I found peace in my art. It's not, for me, it's not a battle anymore.
mm,
I'm not the traumatized artist that I used to be,
mm.
Now it's a peaceful process. It's a beautiful creative process for me.
So, tell me, why have you entered Flux?
Why did I enter Flux? Oh, that's a really good question. I applied for Flux. I'd never heard of Flux. And there's a lots of things on, that the great thing about the internet, one positive thing about the internet is you all these different opportunities,
Yeah,
and you see a lot on there and you kind of go, no, no, no. And I saw the Flux one, I read up about it, and it felt like a good fit for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And so I applied for it, and then Lisa accepted me.
And so Lisa is very good at, in fact, she's a brilliant curator, no question. I think this one coming up will probably be my fifth, I think, that I've done.
Mm.
And there aren't any. There's no two artists alike. You know, you've got 80 artists, but it's not just okay. You know, you get accepted, your work goes on the wall. Thanks very much. It's not that at all, because Lisa spends a long, long time planning where people are going. You don't just get put into a section, because the whole exhibition needs to flow. So she spends an awful lot of time, and I know for a fact that one thing that because I've experienced it with her, is that people send all their artwork in with all the sizes, blah 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 blah, and then when it all turns up, A, it's different artwork, and B, it's different sizes. So all that planning that she's done, she's got to think on her feet and start thinking, okay, how do I fit this in? People end up bringing way more than they have said they're going to bring, so that creates a problem as well, because there's only so much room. But God only knows, she does actually manage to do it and pulls off an absolutely sensational exhibition where she doesn't let the artist hang their work. She has a hanging team to do that, and you will see, you'll find out when you come along. And we've already had a chat during the week, didn't we? And I said about make sure that you can at least come to the BV and any other days you can. You'll find out just how amazing all the other artists are in terms of, you know, people help you. And if someone's not there, if they've gone to get a coffee or something, and someone's interested in their work, well, one of us jumps in and helps, and then we, we'll go and find Lisa. She'll come and have a chat until the person comes back, and then they can talk about their work. But people help, and I think it's. I know Lisa refers to it as a flux family, but it's a proper little community of artists who it's. I think it's probably a lot about the fact that it is an exhibition, but also it's about the fact that people can come and talk to the artist, which you generally don't do in a gallery. You know, your work's in a gallery for a month, and it's up to the people in the gallery to sell it. They don't get a chance really to talk to the artist that often. But it's and talking about that as well. Again, Michelle Watson, I spoke to a couple of weeks ago. I think it's the 20th of June, or the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that part of June anyway. She's got a solo exhibition in Aldeburgh, and I've spoken to her, and she will be going every day, because she also understands that that's really what you need to do to be able to, you know, this thing of letting the art speak for itself. Well, in a lot of cases it doesn't. It takes the artist, people buy into them as well as the art. They buy into that whole. That's how you end up with collectors, isn't it, of your work, because they love you,
because they
as
know
well.
you and they know what
Yeah,
you're trying to
they
say.
know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really well. I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll be interesting to see how you feel about it when it all kicks off. I will be doing a sort of a live broadcast from it, so I'll probably come round and have a chat with you at some point to see how you're finding it. But that's if I can get a word in edgeways, because people will be flocking around you. So you know that's and that does happen. You know, you don't get the chance often to talk until the night's over and you can sit down and fall back in a chair and have a glass of wine and thinking,
I'm
wow,
looking
that's
forward to it.
yeah. So it's a very good thing. So have you got any exhibitions yourself coming up other than Flux? Have you got anything
I
coming up
haven't.
this year?
Flux. There's a potential of something later on in Bristol, but so far that's it for this year.
Yeah, well, maybe not. There is another Flux at the end of the year, so that could be
So
a
maybe
couple with a bit of luck. But you know, I know Lisa chops and changes people around to give everybody a bit of a chance, because she does get inundated with applications and spends an awful lot of time going through people's work, looking at their website to make sure that she doesn't have a lot of people the same. I can remember doing an exhibition a few years ago where one whole room was seascapes, and I just thought, well, that's not great, is it? Because that's all you've got in this, and there must have been 20, 25 artists in there, and it was all seascapes, and it just doesn't make you feel like you want to look very often. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So let me ask you another question. If you go to a gallery, sorry, when I say gallery, I'm talking about big, like the Tate, somewhere like that.
Okay.
I don't mean your little small galleries. I mean
Little village gallery.
big. Yeah, not a little village, not the one down the corner who's selling pictures for 20 quid. No, I don't mean that. I mean a proper big gallery. When you go to there, do you find yourself being critical, or are you more just say to yourself, okay, it's not my thing, I don't like that, or
I think years ago I would have been quite critical. But now, in all honesty, I can look at something and I might not like it personally. I think, well, I'm not putting that up on the wall. I wouldn't have that. But I try to look at the creative process in it and what they have created, because they've created something. And I try to appreciate their creativity.
Yeah.
It may not be something I particularly aesthetically like, but I do try to appreciate that person's creativity.
So going back to what we started talking about right at the beginning, which was about confidence. I was talking to someone today who said that oh no, see, look, this is an age thing. My mind's gone totally blank. Oh my word. Damien Hirst. That's it. Finally got there. So apparently Damien Hirst, when asked who his favourite artist was, he said, well, me, I'm the best. Now, what happens is, if you keep saying that enough people start to believe it. And it's a whole confidence thing, whole big, a whole big thing around the PR of saying, this guy's good. And I know I saw a documentary on him, Tracy Emin, and the Brat Pack of Artists, I think they called it, which is where they all got together in a cafe and decided, right, this is how we're going to do it effectively. And it is about having the confidence, and to be honest, probably being a very good salesman.
Yeah.
That's the
comments like that, some people might think, oh, that's really arrogant. I don't look at it that way. I think that's a really clever thing to say.
It's very clever. Yeah, of course it's clever.
If you're not going to believe in yourself, how the hell are you expecting other people?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, as I've said before, I get when I'm talking to people who are going to be coming on this show and we have a chat beforehand, etc. Every one of them says, oh God, I'm really struggling with being nervous and confident. My confidence is not that high. And nobody else is going to believe in you unless you believe in yourself.
Yeah,
that's it. And I find it interesting that looking at your work and your progression with your ACM stuff in particular, there's a whole big story there that people, if you don't explain that to people, they're never going to know. And that's what I find absolutely amazing about how you come up with your work. And also I find it quite interesting too that the color palette is different for each picture, which again must be a reflection of not the mood you were in when you did it, but that inner part of you that's coming out in those colors. Am I right in saying
you
that?
are right? Yeah. Because it's picking up on an energy, a vibration, a feeling. We all have those different, what does that feeling look like? and it's painting a feeling, it's painting an emotion, and that's got to bring the color into it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
color is important in that.
Yeah, it is. And it's, and that leads me to another question. I'm guessing acrylic, but again, I don't know. Is that what your
I do use
preferred?
acrylic.
Yeah.
And I also I have used on some pieces charcoal and chalk and pastel. I have
Right.
done on the 2 abstract nudes that I did. The lady figure, that is mixed media, acrylic, pastel, charcoal, chalk.
And so again, that's a conscious decision, isn't it? That's a conscious decision to use.
It is. It probably is a conscious decision but it's in some ways it's unconscious, because when you're trying to create something on the canvas, and I can't do that with a paint, then right, I will use this instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a conscious, unconscious thing. It's not like, I'm walking around like a zombie.
No.
Okay, but it's allowing that inspiration to flow. It's allowing that creativity to just to flow without any block or thought or worry or fear, or will that work? Will that not work? How do I do that? Oh, is it going to look rubbish? Blah blah blah. Without any of that, and just letting it flow. And I can only say that now because I can compare myself to the way I was 20 years ago. Where, oh my God, there used to be times where to create a painting or something was kind of stressful at times. Yeah. Because it was stressing about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, is it going to look right? And that in itself is a creative block. Yeah. And now all that's gone. It's not a stressful process. It's a really enjoyable process. And I get inspired. Sometimes I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and think, I've got to do this. And I will come down into my studio and I will create a painting and I'll go back to bed.
And that's interesting. As I was saying to someone last night, actually, that if you suddenly get an idea, you've got a desperate urge to get on with it. Got to go and get it done.
Do it.
Really. And you get excited, don't you? You get excited about the fact that you want to do that.
Yeah.
I haven't got up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't think my wife would appreciate that too much. But, I haven't ever jumped out of bed and come running down. And
I've done that quite a few times. It happens quite frequently.
I think the door would open and what the hell are you doing would be coming back to me very quickly. I'm guessing your husband's all right with that, though.
He's all right.
Yeah.
No recollection of me getting up.
Okay, well, perfect. Yeah, well, what I'm going to do now is we'll just have a little quick, minute break while I run and I let people see what Flux is like. Run a quick little advert for it, and then we'll be back for sort of the last 10 minutes, and we'll see where Gino Parisi is off to next with his work. So I'm just going to run this for a second. So you can see Lisa at the end there was actually just bringing up the plans. See how she sets out everything. It's a hectic week. All starts on the Monday. We all get there. People start turning up with their work, and look, it's an absolutely crazy. It's a crazy week, culminating in the Thursday, with the private view. But well worth it. You can see how busy it was. It's absolutely superb. So, how often are you working like 5 days a week on pictures, 7 days a week on pictures, 1 day a week on pictures, or 2 o'clock in the morning very often? What is it? What is it that how do you sort of set your mind and to do some work?
It is my primary passion, and I fit it in whenever I can, or it fits me in when it wants me to be fitted in.
Yeah.
But no, it's even when I'm not doing, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Or thinking about something, or feeling, oh, how does that fit? How does that whatever? It's always in your head. So it's my full-time job. If people want to consider it as a job, I don't look at it as a job. I follow my passion.
And that's the thing that will come out. That's the thing that will come out in your work. People can see that. It's things people say to me that I'm passionate about what I do, because I actually love teaching people or showing people how to do it. And people say to me, "Oh my word, what on earth are you doing that for? You have people copying you left, right, and centre." And my answer is always the same: they haven't got my brain.
No,
no,
absolutely.
You don't teach a carpenter to fit a piece of skirting board and then say, that's it now. You can, he can go off and do it everywhere else. It's something that we all learn. And funny enough, I've always said, it's interesting how, bearing in mind I was a teacher, so it's interesting for me to say this, but I think what is a sign of intelligence, or one of the signs of intelligence, is how you adapt one skill to another. And so if you are, let's say for argument's sake, that you learned to draw, and we know we've already gone through that little bit, and you didn't as much. So, but let's say just humor me for a minute, that you were effectively, your big thing was charcoal, and drawing charcoal, and that's what you did. Well, then suddenly you head off into the painting world, and you're adapting. It's still eye-hand coordination, and you've got the ability to adapt that skill in a different way.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of people who can't. There's a lot of people who say, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can draw. I can draw dogs. Can't draw people." Well, what I don't understand. I've never understood that, but I think it's more about a mental kind of
Exactly. That's what I was saying before, where you have these blocks. So if your belief is, oh, I can draw a dog, but I can't draw a person. Well, have you tried? That's your block.
Yeah.
Because if you can draw a dog, you can draw a person.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I had a bricklayer once say to me that, "Oh no, I can't tile." And I said to him, "But they're thin bricks. What are you talking about?" But yeah, it's that thing that being able to. And I said this the other week, but I started with doing pen and ink drawings. Well, now with the work that I do in Photoshop, I'm using a tablet and a pen. It's still the same. I've still got that eye-hand coordination. I'm still doing the same thing, just in a different way. And I think that's quite, it's quite interesting how also, again, something I've not asked you, but are there other people in your family that are artistic?
My grandfather on the Italian side painted. One of my sisters studied art, but she never took it any further. Yeah, no one. My grandfather was a painter, but no one ever has taken it on full time, if so to speak. That's their primary.
Right. Yeah.
I've been the first, I think, that I'm aware of.
Right.
Um,
So it hasn't come down through the family then. That's interesting
I don't.
too.
Yeah,
But what about the creative gene? What about
that's what I'm
that?
saying. I think it's the creativity for me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we've all channel it in a different way. So we could. It's about being creative. Some people can channel it in the way they dress.
Yeah.
In the decor of their house, how they lay their house out, what interior design, and in their gardening. It's all about that creative process and how they channel it. I just choose now, today, at this moment in time, to channel it through paintings.
Yeah.
My God, when I think back in my early 20s, I would have loved to be a dancer, and I would have channeled it through that.
Yeah.
Because to me, that is still being creative.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I think we are quite a creative family in that sense, but not a nurturing creative family, in the sense of my upbringing was very focused on, the academia side of it, and not it wasn't my creativity wasn't nurtured. I had to do that myself.
Yeah.
Because it was the old thing was like, well, how are you going to make money doing art? Well,
And
I don't do art for money. I do art, and the money comes after.
This is almost saying you're an artist is almost saying similar to the state of horror that is creative when you tell people that you're going to be a stand-up comedian. It's a similar thing. They go, what the hell? You're never going to make any money out of that. What are you talking about?
The money.
No,
it's about being creative.
No, but I also think that the money helps. There's no question about
that. Well, of course it does. But where do we put that in the priority?
Yeah, and as I've always said, actually, people will buy a picture from you, and almost the people that always buy a picture from you, 9 times out of 10, the last thing they're thinking about is how much it costs. They buy it because they love it.
Yeah.
And that's and we spoke about this before as well, before the show started, but is that you will have people saying, "Oh, you've lost your identity," or you've blah blah blah. They give you some sort of criticism, but then someone will come along with their credit card and go, oh, "I love that, thank you very much." That is actually way more validation than somebody who thinks they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody buys your picture, and it is always because you love it. I've got a Cruella de Vil picture I've created with lots of Dalmatian dogs in it. But Cruella is leader of the pack, so her skin is Dalmatian. And somebody last day of the last flux walked in, and she said to me, she looked at the picture and she carried on walking, and she was thinking all the way around, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, like this. And she went all the way around and came back. And she said to me, oh, I want that picture. And I went, yeah, a lot of people like it. She went, no, I want it. And I went, you want to buy it? She went, yeah, well, give me a hug. Because it turned out she was a vet from Northern Ireland, had a thing about dogs, and it doesn't matter. It almost wouldn't have mattered how much the picture was, because she was having it no matter what. And that's really quite I think the real big part of validation is when someone says to you, you will get, this will happen at Flux, you will get a lot of people that say to you, oh, I absolutely love your work, wish I could afford it. You'll get that a lot, right? But there is your answer then to say, well, I've got some prints.
Yeah.
So, but the truth is that you will get a lot of people. I've had it where and this is probably the worst little sentence I ever hear. When a man looks at one of my pictures, which in particular, it's a big airship picture I've got, absolutely loves it. Oh, he's definitely having it. No, absolutely no chance of him not walking away with that picture until he says, I'll just run that past my partner. And I know I'm never going to see him again because there ain't no way they're going to like it because he does.
Yeah.
So, and it's really, really quite funny when it happens. But you just, as soon as he says it, I feel my heart sink.
That's it. It's gone. The
That is
sale's
not
gone.
gonna, it's not going to happen.
But it's funny you should say it, because whenever, well, in the past decade, the way I look at the sort of selling process, or the idea of somebody buying my painting, what's come naturally for me now is whenever I paint a painting, I'm painting it for the person it is meant to be for.
Yeah, cool.
And I know all my job is to match those two people up.
Yeah.
So my painting it has an owner already, it has a purchaser.
Yeah.
And your Cruella de Vil example is perfect in that, because it was created for her, and you just matched them up. They came together, the universe brought them together, and bingo, the sale.
And that sort of comes in with your spiritual side of it, because I have always believed that you meet people because you're supposed to. Now,
absolutely,
what defines you as a person is how you react to those people, especially the bad ones. It defines you definitely, but also you learn from what happens to you. I know the old adage of learn by other people's mistakes, but unfortunately we're all in a position where we go, oh yeah, but I've got to try, and then you fail and you think, oh god, why don't I listen? And that happens, but it is true. I firmly believe you absolutely meet people because you're supposed to, and the majority of the time those people enrich your life. And for me, with my work, they will generate a picture in my head, just a conversation with them, and I will suddenly have a whole image finished in my brain, and that's it. That's another one definitely going to have. And I can sort of explore that a little bit more, or explain it a little bit more. I was doing a Comic Con in Liverpool, and I'm working on a big trilogy. So this was the first book. A lady bought it. Always say to them, have a chat with them. And she said, oh, I'm doing a PhD in parapsychology. And I went, are you? And she said, yeah. I said, oh, well, believe in that then, do you? So, sort of laughing. And she said, do you not know about Bold Street in Liverpool? It's actually been in the one of the newspapers today, funny enough. It's a time slip. And they've interviewed people on the TV in the past year talking about it too. And it's a time slip. The minute she said it's a time slip, suddenly, another great big whole section of my story is all about a time traveling serial killer. That just came because of that conversation. So that becomes
that is no coincidence, is it?
I don't believe so. No.
And nothing is a coincidence in life. No, I don't believe that.
No,
but
I'm with you.
This idea of or you create something and you've got to sell it, or like you say, people will come up to you. People say all the time, I'd love to buy that, I can't afford it. But for me, I think I need to turn that around and think, well, actually, if I paint something in my studio, what is the point of it staying in my studio? I need to get it out there. I want people to see it. So even if it goes into an exhibition and it doesn't sell, people have seen it. And you've got to, I always say this, get your art out there wherever it is. So it's being, your creativity is being seen. And then one day some will come along and go, I want that. Bingo. Thank you very much.
How many people who paint never show their work?
What's the point?
Thousands. Yeah, thousands. The paintings or pictures sit up in the loft, or if you digital artists, they sit on your computer. No one ever sees them. Oh yeah, I do paint. I do put a few on Instagram. Big deal. You can't. You
Yeah,
can put your work on Instagram. I can put mine on, but there's nothing like seeing the real thing,
yeah,
and you can't get a feel for it at all.
exactly.
You can you only really ever get an impression of what
When
that
you
work looks
see
like.
it for
Yeah,
real. So when when exhibitions you get very excited about, because I think, well, people are going to walk around, they're going to see it. It's being shown. That's what I did it for. I didn't
yeah,
do it to sit there in a studio for months.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that's, for me, is that's exciting,
yeah.
and that's
It's
part of the
really,
process.
it is, and I think you kind of have to live it, and you have to be able to live it for a while,
Mm,
so that it does actually become quite natural. Falling back to what you were saying, you don't get into a car and drive, think about,
yeah,
change gear, look in the mirror. You don't think of that. Just do it, don't you?
just do it.
And it's a little bit like that. It's same that with the kind of work that I do. If a photographer was looking at it, judging it, there's the rule of thirds. There's all these things that you have to comply with. I don't. I
Mm.
either know it looks right or it doesn't,
It doesn't. Yeah,
and when it doesn't look right.
yeah.
So you can go. You can. It gives you, if you're starting out in this world, it gives you a point to
Mm.
start from. But that's all it is. It's a starting point. Well, we've gone well over the hour. I knew we would.
Gosh,
We had a little tech chat, didn't we, during the week? That was hour and 10 minutes.
I know.
It's been absolutely fabulous talking to
Yes,
you,
thank
and
you,
I hope that
Gary.
people genuinely get a sense of what you're about. They come along to the Flux exhibition and inundate your area and
I will be
beat
there.
you up and ask for your autograph. There's a good one.
Yes, hit the
We're
bottom
going to start a
billing.
campaign. Ask for Gino's autograph. Oh, but you know what? If people come to me first, I'm going to be sending them. Go and get your autograph from me.
I'm really looking forward to it now. I
Yeah,
can't wait. It should
it'll
be
be
good.
absolutely brilliant. So hang about, don't disappear
Okay.
completely. Sit in the green room while I just say a few things about next week's artist and what I've had to do with that. And thank you so much for coming on. You've been brilliant. I've learned so much talking to you. It's been
Thank you,
wonderful.
Gary. Thank you
Thanks
for
very
asking.
much.
Cheers.
Absolute pleasure. Well, there you go. I told you it would be really interesting, especially the way that Gino actually works. It's quite something. Really, really, really good. Now, next week, I'm going to have to bring this up because I lost I lost my slideshow right in the middle of talking to Gino, and I had to call it in again, which means it jumps to the beginning. But I'm going to bring it up and put it to the end. So just give me 1 second while I do that. And this is next week's artist, Natalie Mills, another abstract artist. Very interesting chat that I had with her last night, because next week's broadcast will go out exactly the same time, 7 o'clock next Thursday night. It won't be live purely because I'm not around next Thursday. So I've had to do two this week, one last night and obviously this one tonight. So Natalie Mills is coming up next week. You'll find it really quite interesting because she's gone through quite a lot to get back to coming back to art. So very interesting chat. Please jump on. It will come up 7 o'clock next Thursday. And like always, like all of these interviews that I actually do, you will be able to watch them afterwards anyway, and plenty of people do. So this is I'm already booked up now until into October for these. So every Thursday night, it will be another artist that we're showcasing and showing their work. So that's been me done and finished. And thank you so much for watching. And I'm sure I will catch you next week, and we can see pretty much carry on from where we left off. So thanks so much, and see you next week.